Hello, I'm Toby from Toby Jones Talks Music and welcome to another Neil Diamond album discussion. Today we are talking about Neil Diamond's Touching You, Touching Me, released in 1969. It was his third album with the Uni Record label, his first being released in 1968, Velvet Gloves and Spit, followed by Brother Love's Travel and Salvation Show in 1969, the same year as Touching You, Touching Me. Now that will become a topic for a little bit later on. I have to say that Touching You, Touching Me is an album that I don't revisit all that often and certainly haven't revisited it in the last few years, but something compelled me to play it a few days ago and I've played it a few times over the weekend. I've got my thoughts about this album, so I'm going to convey those thoughts in this video. Now, my first spin was the vinyl album. Unfortunately, the vinyl album that I've got has certainly seen better days, quite a bit of surface noise on that, so after that first listen, the vinyl has pretty much been retired apart from a showpiece for these videos and to have a nice look at in the collection. The second listen was on this brilliant Play Me Uni Studio Recordings Plus box set, which has got all the albums from Velvet Gloves and Spit through Brother Love, Touching You, Touching Me, Tapioca Manuscript, Stones and Moods. I did a review of this a few years ago. Really good set if you are a Neil Diamond fan, particularly of those uni years. The one thing that irks me a lot on this is that, again, a little bit more attention could have been paid to this track listing, because on this, the first track from this album, Everybody's Talking, is the last track on CD 1. You then have to go to disc 2 to get the second track onwards on this album. It feels like a little bit more attention could have been paid just to have put that song on disc 2. In terms of the end of disc 2, there's the first 4 songs of Stones, so it wouldn't have been as much of a dramaticism, if that's a word, to put the first 3 songs of Stones on and then go to the last 4 disc 3. So neither the vinyl or the CD, both of my physical outputs for this album, are particularly perfect to go and listen to it too. That might well be a reason why I haven't revisited it all that much. So played it on the vinyl, played the CD, albeit had to trudge over to the CD player to play the rest of the album after the first song, and then I played it on my iPod on a walk yesterday, and writing a little bit about this album, some notes before this. I've listened to most of it a 4th time today. Now, this is an album that's not talked about a lot in either of the Neil Diamond books, which I regularly reference on these videos, and that could possibly be telling that this is an album that really is a rushed album to get this out on the back of 2 successful singles. I feel like this album was the first time with Uni Records that didn't resemble a shift, a growth in momentum, if you will. Velvet Gloves and Spit very much did. It was a different sound to the Bang Records era, albeit Neil's still trying to find himself to a degree. Brother Love's Travel and Salvation Show is again another growth. This, as an album, as an overall piece, I think the momentum is stunted a little bit on this album. Holly Holy was a single before this was released. That was the main song from this album. The big hit of this year, 1969, Sweet Caroline, really propelled Neil Diamond to a new level of stardom. This song was a single, but it was added to reissues of Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, the previous album, the first album from 1969, and also the UK version of this album, Touching You, Touching Me. We're not going to talk about that song as part of this album because I see it more as a 9-song album. Even the album title is inspired, albeit reversed, by the lyrics from Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, Touching Me, Touching You, reverse Touching You, Touching Me. There's some sort of meaning to that. I don't know, I certainly don't know. But as I've played this album over the last few days, I found it difficult to not listen to this and pinpoint pieces where it's better on other albums, and without comparing this album negatively against others. And I'll always say, this isn't a negative review as such, but I'll always preface this sort of review because I'm a big Neil Diamond fan, and people sometimes come at me down below at the comments saying, how dare you criticise Neil Diamond? Look, I'm just giving an honest review here. Neil has done some brilliant music over the years, some not so brilliant music over the years, but this is an interesting topic, actually, Touching You, Touching Me, because as I say, this is the first time where, for me at least, the momentum is stunted a little bit. So let's get into the album itself. There's 9 tracks on the album to introduce it. On side 1, there are 2 covers to open things up. Everybody's Talking, the Fred Neil song, and Mr. Bojangles by Jerry Jeff Walker. I think the most popular or well-known version of that song is by Sammy Davis Jr. Then 2 Neil originals on side 1, Smoky Lady and Holly Holy, very well-known song. And for the last time on this video, I'll mention it, Sweet Caroline on the UK press of the vinyl closes this album, side 1 of the album, sorry, and then side 2 opens with another cover, Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now. This would not be the only time that Neil Diamond used Joni Mitchell's music. He sings Chelsea Morning, which I think is a Joni Mitchell song, on Stones, and the singer sings his song Ain't No Way and New York Boy are all Neil Diamond originals, and then Until It's Time For You To Go, which was a minor single for Neil, closes off the album. So, my first niggle with this album is the fact that there are 2 covers opening up this album. 2 covers opening things up, another 2 covers on side 2. There are no covers on the previous 2 albums with Uni Records. Velvet Gloves and Spit and Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show is all Neil Diamond original compositions. If you count Just For You on the Bang label, they are all Neil Diamond compositions, albeit a couple of those repeated from The Feel of Neil Diamond, his first album. And apart from explicit covers albums, i.e. Dreams or the movie album later on, which are very much covers albums intended to be singing other people's songs, this is the first and only time that 2 covers open up a Neil Diamond album. I'm Glad You're Here With Me Tonight, which was released in 1977. That opens with a cover God only knows, but track number 2, Let Me Take You In My Arms Again, was a Neil number. Now, covers in themselves I think are fine in Neil Diamond's career. If you look at Stones, which I reviewed last year, I thought that was another solid album from the 70s, but I think that the covers are fine there because they fit with the more sophisticated vibe of that album. That album is very much, to me, you know how I've talked about this in the past, there are maybe some new wave albums, or any album really, maybe a country album, where you've got the main song, I'm thinking maybe Behind Closed Doors by Charlie Rich, albeit The Most Beautiful Girl was very successful as well, but let's keep with that idea, that's the main song, that's the first song, a little bit like I Am I Said from Stones, and then the rest of it follows as not so substantial. But with Stones and I Am I Said and what follows there, the likes of Husbands and Wives, Suzanne, I Think It's Going to Rain Today, they fit more with the sophisticated vibe of I Am I Said. But the choice of covers here, at least for me, are somewhat questionable, let's say. Everybody's Talking, the first song on this album. It fits okay, I think, with Neil. I think this is a song that can be adapted by most artists pretty well. But because it can be, I think that, to my ears, it feels like anybody could be singing this. It's not distinctively a Neil Diamond song. And that probably throws me off straight away with not having a great album opener. That's a really good thing to open an album well, of course it is. But it does bring the momentum down somewhat. But again, it's okay, it's not bad. Mr. Bojangles, the second song, you know what? I've actually always really liked this one. I think this one would actually fit a little bit better or nicely on Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, with the only reason for that being that this song has got more of a Misfits vibe, but the lack of a better word to use. I think this would feel a little bit better on the Brother Love album. Both Sides Now, this was a song on the Gold Live album as well. And again, this is okay. I think this fits more with Neil's raw side. So actually, this one does blend a little bit more into the album, the same as Until It's Time For You To Go. It does fit a little bit more with the more raw, gentle sound of And the Singer Sings His Song. But again, they're okay. They're not great. They're decent, if you like. This, again, is a short album. I talked about this having only 9 songs. It's a short album, at least I thought to my ears and listening to it. That was an observation, but actually looking at the numbers, it's not that short compared to others. It's surprisingly, to my mind at least, it's very close to Velvet Gloves and Spit in terms of its length. Velvet Gloves is just over 31 minutes. Wikipedia only has it at 27. Maybe that's a pressing without the Pot Smoker song, I don't know. But this is just short of 31 minutes compared to Wikipedia. But what's undeniable, barring, a couple of minutes and a song here and there or whatever the rest of it, it's shorter in terms of the amount of tracks. Now, that's absolutely fine if you've got a quality over quantity argument. Now, my mind plays tricks on me for some reason. I thought that before checking this, that Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show actually had 14 songs on it. It doesn't. It has 12 songs on the record. Now, Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show could be criticised as well for having some filler on it, particularly the likes of River Runs, New Grown Plums. That's more filler. That's a shorter song. There's some really good songs on that album, but that album has varying quality. You've got the sublime title track, Glory Road, and The Grass Won't Pay No Mind, etc., etc. But this one, it is shorter, but it still doesn't have that overall quality, consistent quality throughout. But, once again, in comparison to other albums, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, that I find it difficult to talk about this without comparing it to other albums. But once again, as another comparison, there's 5 Neil originals here, there are 4 covers. There's more covers on Stones, so you can't really throw stones at that idea. Do you like that? Just come up with that one. But if you look at Neil's material, which is the main thing I'm going to focus on, I don't think it's overall it's too great. It's certainly, again, a varying quality. 2 of the 5 are very solid. The others have varying quality, so to look at that a little bit more in detail. Smoky Lady, which is the first original, and once again, from a momentum idea of the album, I'm very much a custodian of the whole album idea rather than individual songs. And as I said, the momentum isn't entirely there, given that there's 2 covers to start this off, and the first Neil original ain't that great either. I feel like Smoky Lady doesn't really go anywhere. It feels a little raw, unfinished, unpolished even. I think it's unfair to say that it sounds like a demo, but again, in terms of the momentum of this album, it does play into my mind of the whole rushed idea here, that the record label just wants to get an album out to capitalise on the success of the 2 popular songs of this year, which are featured next on the album. So Holly Holy, I looked at Hot August Night in the last video I did, and there's a better version of this track on Hot August Night. It's one of Neil's more popular songs. In fact, going back to that first point, I could say that for a lot of Neil Diamond songs around this point. Crunchy Granola Sweet on Stones, maybe And the Grass Won't Pay No Mind, a better version. But I think the studio version, the gap between the studio and the live version isn't as much possibly as Holly Holy's studio version and the Hot August Night version is. But putting that argument to a side for a minute, this I think is one of Neil's more popular songs, more well-known songs. I've always liked it. I wouldn't say I love it compared to some other Neil Diamond songs. It recreates that gospel spiritual vibe, I think, of Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. There's a slight growth, but once again, it feels a little bit like going back to old ideas, possibly. But I think it lacks a little bit compared to Brother Love, because it lacks that real heart, and particularly the theatrical sound, the dramatic theatrical sound, how it builds up Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. That isn't as much there. It's visible, very much. It's got a gospel choir. It's got, again, more of a gospel sound like Brother Love. It's there, but it's not as visible. It's not as much there as it was on Brother Love. But the thing that makes the Hot August Night version so good is that the theatre aspect is most certainly there on Hot August Night, on the track itself, but once again, on the album. I think track placing, again, coming back to that idea, being at the end of side 1, doesn't particularly help it. I wonder in another world whether this this song opening up Touching You, Touching Me, with possibly And the Singer Sings His Song being the second song, would possibly carry that momentum on a little bit more. So side 2 opens with both sides now, which I talked about, and then we have And the Singer Sings His Song, which in strange ways, I think on this Play Me box set, yes, it says And the Singer Sings His Songs. Even in the David Wilde book, it is mentioned as And the Singer Sings His Songs, but I am 95% sure that it is indeed And the Singer Sings His Song. Singular. Song. I think arrangement-wise, to date in his career, and possibly maybe even till Play Me and the likes of Cantilever, it is the gentlest song of his career to date. It's got a similar feel, once again, if you look at the last album, to Juliet and The Grass Won't Pay No Mind. But from a vocal standpoint, it's a very much more exposed and fragile Neil Diamond that's exposed here to the audience. It's more of an orchestral sound in the chorus, the instrumental sections, and I think that really complements the laid-back verses with the acoustic guitar. And this is a song that I enjoy. It's, again, because it's on this album, it's not one I go back to too often, but it is a good song, and it is one of the highlights of the Gold live album as well. We then have to go a little bit more negative, unfortunately, on Ain't No Way, which is the penultimate Neil penned song on this album. This is very much a throwback to Velvet Gloves and Spit, but not a good one, I don't think. From the start of this song, I get Holiday in Blues. It sounds somewhat similar to that. I'd love to know if it does to you as well down below in the comments. Holiday in Blues has a story to tell, and then therefore it's somewhat memorable. Lyrically, this is seriously lacking depth and doesn't have a story to tell. it's just not memorable. There's the backing singers of the do whole thing, and that just doesn't do it for me. You know what? It's okay. It's half decent to listen to. But talk about a shift, an uneven shift in tone between, and the singer sings its song, which is so... I keep saying sings its song. You'll have to excuse me on that. That's just so gentle. And then this, boom, goes completely left field. So that's another thing, that there's a kind of an uneven tone on this album, but not a track that I particularly like. But to end, New York Boy, which is the penultimate song on the album, the last Neil Penn song. I think this is a bit of a return to form. It's got a catchy chorus. I like the line, if they'll get used to the sideburns, I'll get used to the corn. This is what I would probably call a good album track. It's not anything fantastic, but it is one. There are so many in Neil's career which aren't spectacular, but are solid album tracks. But I think as we've gone through there's been very much an uneven tone going through. You probably have Holly Holy both sides now, and the singer sings his song is the most consistent track listing or continuation of this album. Ain't No Way completely goes all over the place before New York Boy is more of a middling song again. But this is an uneven album. Once again, it's something that I can't just pick on for Touching You, Touching Me. I think even if you look at Moods, that's an uneven album in terms of the tone. Is that me maybe coming from this as more of a rock fan who looks at albums and goes that this sounds more the same, therefore I like it. And with the likes of Neil Diamond, I can't shake that it's not a concept. Beautiful Noise, Melody Road, even the bang output has a certain distinctive sound or vibe or feel. Is that something that maybe I can't shake? And I do fall into a trap a little bit, I think, of potentially picking apart every other album that doesn't have that concept. You could look at maybe 12 songs on Home Before Dark. They have the Rick Rubin production on it, which has more of a raw feel. So you've got not necessarily a concept, but something that makes those albums unique and a little bit different. This is an album that I don't revisit very often, and I think from talking through this, I understand why, but it isn't a bad album by any stretch, but I think that pound for pound, I think it is probably a little bit weaker than the albums that come before it, and that has something to do probably with the covers. It has something to do with the fact that the original Neil Diamond output on this isn't as strong. Is this entirely Neil's fault? I don't know, because I can only infer that this feels a little bit like a rushed out album in reaction to the Holly Holy and Sweet Caroline singles. But you know what? The album before this wasn't without its faults as well. And that's why I will present the idea that the best, as Neil Diamond floats across the screen, I will present the idea that a combination of these two albums, Touching You, Touching Me and Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, maybe a 10 or 12 song combination using that Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show cover. I think that's far more captivating, has a bit of a feel to it. Touching You, Touching Me doesn't really have that. I think that would have been a better single release for 1969 rather than these two releases which both have songs of varying qualities. This feels, compared to Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, which has more of a consistent sound, not a totally consistent sound. But because that has more of a consistent sound and this is a little bit more inconsistent, I was going to say all over the place, I think that's a little bit harsh, a bit more inconsistent, that this does feel, dare I say, more of a cash-in album, such as the less care and attention, the track listing, the feel, etc. And I think immediately the track listing puts me off somewhat for this being a whole complete album. 2 covers to start the thing off. Again, suggests to me there isn't much faith in Neil's own music, and then having Smoky Lady, which is one of the weaker Neil compositions, as the 3rd track on this album, the first Neil Diamond penned song on this album, means the momentum does start to tumble somewhat before this has really got going. I don't think that after this exercise that this will go into the regular rotation, but it was nice to hear Mr. Bojangles again. One thing I'll take from a Neil Diamond original perspective is that New York Boy is a song that I'd almost forgotten, and have enjoyed listening to that a little bit more. So those are my thoughts on Touching You, Touching Me. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. This is a continuation of the Neil Diamond series, which I'll be doing regular videos. I don't want to say weekly. Regular videos up to the release of Wild at Heart on the 8th of May. I'll be doing a full review of that album when it comes out. So if you are looking forward to that, then please do engage with this video. It helps with the channel being found in the YouTube algorithm. So a like, a comment, a share, subscribing to the channel, clicking on the bell to receive notifications when new videos come out. Any of those interactions will really help with supporting the channel on this YouTube journey. We're also available as a podcast form on audio or video on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and available as an audio form podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a page set up on Facebook, Instagram, X, and also on TikTok. On the first 3, you'll get notified when videos are released, because you might not always see them in the YouTube page. TikTok, there are a few shorts, maybe shorter versions of some of the videos, but if you want to go and follow us on any of those pages, that would be absolutely awesome. I hope you've enjoyed me talking about touching you, touching me. Because there's not much to offer on the internet or even in the new 2 Neil Diamond books that I go and read, I'd really appreciate if you guys can let me know what you think of this album down in the comments. There is bound to be someone out there that this is their favourite Neil Diamond album, and power to you. I think as a summary, this is the weaker of the 3 Uni albums released so far, but it's okay. I'd probably give this maybe 3 stars out of 5, possibly. But there is another video up there that you might well consider watching if you want to continue your Toby Jones Talks music journey. But the last thing I will say is thank you very much for your company. I really appreciate you taking your well-earned time to spend it with me today. And hopefully I'll see you all again soon for another video. Thank you very much for your company.